Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Rockin' Beards podcast. It is episode 25, so Jay decided to not show up. He's in Ottawa, which is, our nation's capital and all. And today it's HSR, and joining me.
What's up? I'm Syd. Sorry we're late. It's my fault.
Yeah.
I apologize for nothing.
So this should have come out yesterday. It'll come out today for those of you who care. And if you don't, we are going to be reviewing a fun classic old album because there was nothing we really recognized on the new albums, and we're going to just keep doing that when it looks boring.
Yeah, and you know what? I barely recognize this album. There, I said it.
What album is it?
It's definitely Maybe by everyone's favorite Brit rock hipster kings, Oasis.
Yes, it is those guys. Full disclosure, if you don't, well, not full disclosure, if you don't care about us talking about anything, hit the show more. Skip ahead to what you care about listening, what song you care about listening about. Sometimes it happens. On that note, I've never listened to much Oasis in my life. My entire Oasis experience is Wonderwall. There was that news story about Jay-Z performing Wonderwall at a concert that caused some controversy a couple years back.
I didn't even hear about that.
And that's all I know about Oasis. I've never listened to them. And, nothing really. So for me, this was like, all right, I'll try it out. I'll see what it's like. So we jumped back. I Googled, what is the best Oasis album?
Oh, is that what you did?
I really did.
That's what you did. Okay.
And I found like 3 or 4 quasi sites I've heard of, and they're like opinion pieces, all put definitely Maybe as the best Oasis album. So I was like, all right.
Their debut album, right?
Yep.
And this is the best one according to the internet. So they never got better than their first release.
And part of it is interesting. It's because it's like he never had anything more to say than on this album, and that's part of the problem. And now this isn't me. This is the brief
this is you guys.
reading
This is
of what I
said.
found on the internet about Oasis. So
We're just relaying your opinions to you right now.
And that Oasis, almost something else that's not me that I in my brief research, Oasis almost exists as like a counter movement to Nirvana by creating not so nihilistically depressing grungy stuff. And that, I don't know how true or not that is, internet. I appreciate when you put in the comments and correct me on these factoids. It's very fun. So feel free to inform me and everyone else what's going on with Oasis there. But, so I got not much shows. Have you listened to much of them?
Wonderwall, Champagne Supernova, the ongoing ridiculous beef between Noel and Liam Gallagher, which apparently you hadn't heard of.
No, I didn't even know they were beefing.
So that's been a thing for as long as time itself. And, their comments about being the new Beatles and being the biggest thing since Sliced Bread released Stairway to Heaven. I don't know. Never a fan. Never really was a fan. We'll get into my opinions song for song on this thing.
I just would like to throw out that apparently both Liam and Noel are releasing solo albums in the next couple
months.
Just
so
keep
look
things
out for that
lively.
if you want half of Oasis at one point and then the other half of Oasis at another point.
Interestingly enough, since I didn't know a lot about them, is from what I can tell, Noel, who isn't the singer, he's not the singer guy, right? The main singer is Liam, if I'm not mistaken. So Noel wrote everything and Liam sung everything. So on this album, I checked about 8 or 9 of the credits and they all seem to say the same thing. I might be wrong. Please forgive me. But I found that to be cool because how then does Liam be able to hold up on album writing all this time later if Noel? I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking shit.
I mean, as a musician, worth your salt if you can't write and record an album 30 years into your career.
Well, maybe you can. Maybe you're just the session guy. Maybe you're just decoration.
Maybe you're Ringo Starr, who is also releasing an album.
Yeah.
In a couple weeks. We're debating whether or not.
We wanted to, is Ringo Starr cool or popular still? I asked Bonnie, and Bonnie's like, if you really want to listen to songs about how Ringo used to perform in the Beatles, and it was really? Is that all he is? I don't know.
It was a deep cut. That she made.
Does anybody want us to review the Ringo Starr album?
Yeah,
Does
tell
anybody
us.
care?
If you want us to review Ringo I mean, I'll do it. Fuck it, he's a Beatle. Sorry. I'm supposed to be watching my my mouth.
We're trying to be cleaner due to the fact that some of our videos have now been deemed not safe for advertisers. So if we swear a lot, apparently it's bad news bears. So
we're trying to bring the kids in now.
Yeah,
this is a family-friendly podcast.
So we'll just fudge it up a little bit sometimes. I don't know.
I see what you did there.
Anyway.
All right, so this album cover.
It's cool. It's like, honestly, you just picture them being spaced out, doing things I can't mention, and sitting around like, we gotta write a song about a thing. And they're just brainstorming before they start jamming. That's what I picture in that like setting.
It reminds me a little bit of, I mean, this album came out years later, but Maroon 5. It won't be soon before long.
I genuinely don't know that I've seen a Maroon 5 album cover.
It's actually a great album. You should check it out, and it's a great cover. It's them kind of in different positions around the room. It's a little spacier. Like some of them look like they're floating, some of them look like they're upside down type thing. But it's a similar vibe to like we don't really know what's going on. We're just kind of here making music, and things are going on around us.
Fair enough.
It's so I think they might have drawn a little bit of inspiration from this cover.
And I love the title of the album. Honestly, definitely maybe. It's just the most non-committal thing ever. And I mean, that's obviously the point. And as we listen to the album, it really fits. It's definitely maybe one of the most fitting album titles I've ever encountered in my entire life. That's all I'm saying. Definitely maybe.
Jay would have something to say about that. I have
that's
nothing
totally
to say about
fine.
that, but
Jay's not here. He chose to go to our nation's capital and not be joining us on our 25th milestone episode here. Fuck Jay.
I miss you, Jay.
Oh shit, I said that. Oh, I swear again.
You gotta stop that.
I know it's bad. It's hard. Okay, let's behave. Let's move into the review and focus.
Sorry, kids.
So,
what do you think? You're some kind of rock and roll star?
Maybe. Well, this song definitely lives up to its title. I would say that much in terms of not being false advertising for what he's trying to convey message-wise. I like this. I got sucked right in. It's like a whole song about how he wants to be famous and he's sick of his fucking life and he just wants to be him and I swear again and be free and all of that other stuff. And I think it's one of the rare times in music, and it did get annoying later on this album, one of the rare times where I really appreciated how the first verse and the first verse kind of repeated again. And it really sold the point, though, within the song of what it's trying to do. Like, Kendrick did something similar on Damn that I thought was impressive, albeit more interesting. But given the style of music and stuff, it made sense what he was trying to convey. And I enjoyed that. The second verse is really relatable because you can almost feel like he understands that when he's on the stage, he has control. He's this thing, and when he's off the stage, he's just a different person that he doesn't like it. You know, like I got it. I related to him. I
like how you're already kind of giving your points as if you're like rebutting me. Like I haven't even said anything yet, bro.
I know, but I'm just. This is what I wrote. I wrote a fair bit on this one.
Yeah, I actually did like this tune. I thought it was a great opener. That little guitar lick that comes in really signals like something special is about to happen. And then the song is fine. It's catchy. It's meat and potatoes rock and roll. I like the lyrical irony of the fact that he's not a rock and roll star yet. And I won't get into the 5.5 minute song runtime. Yeah, you already said something about it. I'll get into that a little later on the album. But yeah, no, as an opener, this is a solid track. It's catchy. It's nothing special, and if it was released today, I don't know that it would make any major waves. But you're right, for the time that it was released.
Because like you got to consider like it's got almost this upbeat feel to it, while still kind of fitting into the realm of its time period, right? It doesn't feel out of place for '94.
No.
It feels like it belongs, but if you can consider like a lot of what the other major acts are sounding like, this is like, I'm gonna make it. Like you listen to this song and you know he's not happy with where he is, but you know he's going somewhere.
Like he's hopeful, he's upbeat, he's optimistic.
And he's like, I'm maintaining my faith. And he is just expressing himself constructively through this song rather than probably what he would like to do on a regular day. And I think there's almost like a certain nuanced feel to it. Like you kind of get lost. Like the music keeps you in this groove when you listen to them. Like you can almost feel like you don't have to listen to them. You can listen to them. You get into this vibe where you just kind of space out. Like you can clearly tell they were high.
I want to say too, it's important to note that we're doing the remastered version.
Yeah.
So we're not judging anything based on the original mixing and mastering. So this is all very much, the volume is pumped up. Everything is made to sound much beefier, much clearer than probably the original record was. I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard it before this.
Me neither. So if there is some nuances we missed, apologize. But even on that note, I've been looking into just the effects of mastering and on the nuances of music, and you can hear nuances in the guitaring and how like things are kind of sparsed in an older way than a lot of the way modern music is made today. Like even the remastered version still has that old feel, is what I'm trying to say. It sounds clearer.
It sounds some of the guitar lines sound a little out of tune.
Which is
on some of the tracks, which is endearing. To be fair, Nirvana did it too.
But I like it. I feel like they're not afraid to be imperfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. The mentality is if the song is good, then not everything has to be in perfect pitch. You know, you play a wrong note, it's excusable. You play without passion, it's unforgivable, that old adage. Yeah, it rings true here. And you know, again, I don't have many bad things to say about this song other than the fact that it's so effing long. See me watching myself?
Relax. And then I would say that, like, the long part, normally it does grind my gears. When I looked at the track lengths on this album, I was like, oi gewollt. It was just not like something I was excited for. But this is the best background music. This morning, I put this album on to just give it a listen. And I started writing something, and I started doing stuff. I have to admit, I wasn't able to necessarily sit there and focus on the album. But my brain was wandering, and I find it to be really cool, like, music to do things to.
But is that really the best compliment that you can pay to something? That it's the best background music? Like, this is great
to put you in a vibe.
Focus on. Like, people spent money and put time into recording an album that you don't want to pay attention to.
You know what? I would say that, yeah, there's a time and a place for music you want to focus on, but I don't know that with the repetition, because they're really repetitious. They're not trying to come out here and create the most pay attention to what I'm saying music. They're trying to deliver their message with the amount of brevity. Like, there's a lot of brevity in the lyrical delivery. And I think that's more about being able to get lost in the vibe. And it's almost like an additive to your day. I think that for at least them at this age, they would have, like, they're working class heroes in their mind, right?
And that is something to be.
And they're just making music to, like, reflect that. So if you, like, picture yourself walking around a factory listening to Oasis, you know, I think that's what they were writing for. And they really hit that mark. Like, I want to listen to this when I'm at work. And that's the impact it had on me. Like, it would help me accomplish goals. Anyway, I give this a 4.5 on 5. I thought it was really interesting from a lyrical point of view. It really artistically accomplished its goals, and I don't really see a lot of flaws, except maybe by, like, the last little bit it could have got shorter, but...
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. I'm going to be nice
on this one.
It's a solid start. That's a 4. It's a good start. I can't hate on this too much.
Nah.
But,
Shakermaker.
Shakermaker. But a bump. Oh my god, that was boring.
It was definitely the worst song on the album in my opinion. Spoiler alert. Everything else is better than this. Apparently this is a single too, right? Full disclosure, I tried to watch the music videos, but they looked boring. As you may have told, I don't care a lot about boring, stand around in the room playing with your band music videos. It's the same thing like the 90s hip-hop videos where you stood around with your crew. It's boring. Give me something more.
Especially not when the song is dull for 5 minutes of the same thing.
Yes, it is quite... I don't even know what it's about. It's like, it's just kind of... Like, it's obscure lyrics. It's, like, very slow paced. It kind of feels like they were trying to write this, like, 60s drug anthem.
Well, it sounds like it's trying to be the Beatles, and it's got this cool little chord progression, this, like, cool little offbeat chord progression that could have gone somewhere. They could have taken it to some really, really quirky, interesting places, but instead they just decided to vibe. And like, I get it. You're in a practice space. You're vibing with your band members. You come up with a cool little lick. Everyone's vibing. Everyone's jamming. Everyone's kind of stoned, and it's like, yeah, we could jam on this for like 10 minutes. And then like, nah, let's cut it down to 5. We got to put it on an album, and it's like you could have trimmed it down to 2, and it would have worked.
Maybe 3 minutes.
Maybe 3 if you know they have that little piece in the middle where they stop and then it kind of picks back up again. But
the problem with this song is that the repetition that was almost endearing in Rock and Roll Star actually hurts this track. Like, I get at this point that it is more about the experience of maybe being at the show and dancing, or you're putting this on almost to like get ripped with your boys, as opposed like this is such context music.
Yeah,
like,
and I was thinking about that. Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was thinking about that earlier. And this really is an album that works much better live, I think, than it does on the record.
Because, like, I could see how if I'm at the show, even this song comes on, all right, I'm dancing with a girl, life is peachy, and you can dance to it, right? Like, it isn't, like, boring music. It's just, to me, this song is particularly uninteresting in terms of its ability to keep me entertained. I give it a 3. Like, it's well made, but you can tell that it's really just ripping off a bunch of classic Beatles sounds and been trying to like throw in like a little, this is who we are, we're the new Beatles, pay attention to us. And it was released as a single. Like, of this album, this is not like, I don't know, maybe it was good, maybe other people liked it. 3. Really not that interesting.
2.
But I guess since we're talking about this song still here and today, we can say that it did in fact live forever.
Wonderwall is a great song, and no, that wasn't Wonderwall. Whoops.
This came before Wonderwall. Listen, Wonderwall was ripping off old Oasis. That's all we're learning here. I like this song. I find that it's a little repetitious again. I'm getting the feeling that Noel is bored with his life, like really bored with his life at all. But he deliberately doesn't want to sound like Nirvana, as something the genius told me about this track in particular, like Liam's notes.
So he gets all of his information from lyricgenius.com.
It's definitely the starting point, and I know that it's user like based of real hardcore fans, so if somebody says something stupid, it gets downvoted like Reddit. And a lot of artists are kind of vain, so they comment. Half the shit is quotes of interviews and like the artist verified account being like, yeah, I felt like this. Like, shit, if you want to understand Weezer lyrics, Rivers Cuomo has commented every lyric himself.
Really?
All the annotations are from Rivers.
That's amazing.
So when you look at the genius, it's kind of reputable. I say the genius, like, take it with a grain of salt, but they very rarely led me wrong.
It's like the Wikipedia of song lyrics.
Yeah.
Like you'll get your general information. Some it'll be verified, some it'll be a little more obscure.
But something like this, I'm going to take it that the quote from the interview or whatever about him saying this is probably true. So, either way, they were trying to be the anti-Nirvana kind of grunge feel here. So they come in with this uplifting song about how even though everything's kind of restless, they're going to find a way to like live forever, you know?
Yeah.
Simple. But really moving into pop territory with this one. I heard this song, and when I think about its context of its timeline being in 94, and then you think about a lot of music that came after, there are a lot of people who like listened to Oasis and then polished the sound and made it Americanized that we grew up with. Like
Oasis, for example.
Yeah, but I was thinking more specifically like somebody like Johnny Resnick, or from the I think that's his name, from the Goo Goo Dolls.
Goo Goo Dolls, sure, yeah.
And guys like that, Third Eye Blind.
Yeah.
And a whole like genre that dominated the late '90s of rock basically took their formula and ripped it off and made it really work. And it's funny
because I'm sure if you showed Third Eye Blind or the Goo Goo Dolls to Oasis and said, hey, these guys, or even who are those guys, Drops of Jupiter, Train. Yeah, you show those guys to Oasis and say, hey, this sounds like you. They'd go, what? That doesn't sound like me. That's pop trash. Something like that.
Okay, but to be fair, this song isn't necessarily pop trash for 94, but it does kind of sound like pop trash later on in the decade.
Sure.
I like the song, though. I think its repetition, there's too much of it already on this album. Like, you got to consider it. There have been 3 songs, and this is the second song to more or less repeat the verse of
and
the first
it doesn't
verse.
stop. Don't worry, it keeps happening.
And then it repeated it again. And all right, so I'm guessing that they're really trying to drive home that they're not a band about the lyrics per se, and they're about the rest of it. And their musicking is dope. I have to give them credit. It's not boring. Maybe I'm not a musician, so I don't know, whatever. But when I listen to the vibe they're creating, it still feels like a good vibe. It's not like this one feels too long. I feel like it's a good length. It doesn't necessarily get boring except for the lyrics. It's the flow and feel is great. It's just I kind of wish there was more dynamic lyricism in this band. I'm giving this a 4. I don't think it sucks.
It's a good length in context with the rest of the record. I'll give it that.
Okay.
The vocal delivery is really, really solid on this track. He sounds good. He's got that rasp, that Kurt Cobainish kind of rasp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a cute little drum intro. It's nothing amazing, but it's fun. The song is really repetitive, man. It's not, and as this was a single too, right? As a single,
I feel like it fits as a single. Like, I don't know how it's not a single.
we're 3 songs in right now, and
This is
they've
their second
done-
single.
to me the songs have done the same thing one after the other. Like there's no sort of deviation from the formula. And yes, the music sounds organic. I'll give it that. It's not, it doesn't sound like a computer made this band. Like this is straight like garage rock from the jam space floor to the studio, which is cool, but it feels just like that. Like it feels like no extra thought really went into fine tuning the tracks and really. And again, this was their first release, and they definitely went on to learn how to fine tune their tracks and go for more of a pop vibe, which again probably to their detriment. And I'm very biased. That's why I'm glad it's the two of us here, because you're giving the positive spin on Oasis and I'm giving the negative.
I just
spin.
happen to see I'm not taking them that seriously as a band here, because they're not taking themselves that seriously as a band here. So like, if you were to listen to this album and only this album and then look at how pretentious their reputations are later on in life, you'd be like, they fucking would have hated themselves later on in the future, is what I'm getting the vibe of. These seem like the equivalent of real motherfuckers on the grind. I said I swear again.
Yeah, no, you gotta.
And I'm sure there's a ratio. Everybody still has ads on playing with some swearing. I don't know. So I feel like it's like real folk on the grind, doing their things proper, and you can almost get that raw energy. Like, I feel like it's relatable to my life, trying to be on to build things and to accomplish more than the redundancy of going to the work and doing this other stuff. And it really does.
And from a lyrical standpoint, really, like, if you get that, that's cool. And I hope a lot of people get that. Obviously, the internet gets it, voting this their best album. And, I mean, I'm going to give this one a 3.5. I'm going to be generous because it's not a bad song. It's still a little boring to me. Like, the vocal delivery is good, but it's not, like, up in the sky.
Yeah. So this one is more upbeat and more political and more direct in a message. I was like, whoa, there's some substance to this song. They can actually write out full lyric sets without necessarily relying on repeating themselves. And this is just kind of criticizing famous people who believe they represent the common folk, and it's almost impossible to say that sentence without picturing Bono appearing. Right? Like that's the token example of who this song's about. Like a guy who's like for the people.
That's funny because I would say in 94, when this record came out, and just based on a lot of the sounds on this record, U2 was a major influence on the sound here.
I don't know how he was in 94. I do know how he was in 2005, and that guy is I'm not talking
Bono, I'm talking the band, like U2.
Oh, I know. But, I mean, U2 is always... You can't picture U2 without Bono in my head. Like,
I suppose, but I mean, like, there's The Edge.
Yeah.
There's The Edge.
Anyway, I feel like the song's interesting because it also reflects the fact that they see themselves as the common folk based on a couple of the lines kind of like relating, now you understand our world or whatever, or some shit like that. And then in the third verse kind of talks about the like reclaiming what people will do to like keep their status, and they'll do and say anything, like almost like charity and stuff like that becomes almost a gimmick to make yourself look like better than you are. And I was like, man, Oasis, this is the first really interesting song. But then it still kind of feels like the other ones on this album.
It fits, but it is a little more upbeat, and I would say this is the first track here that I can say merits its 4.5 minute runtime.
Right.
It does feel repetitive, but it feels, it's a little more fun and it's a little more upbeat, and the repetition feels like it's there to serve a purpose. I really, really, really like the vocal hook, and I like the way it runs throughout this, whatever, where he goes into that falsetto here. Another track that came out around this time, Our Lady Peace released Navid, and this is very, very, very reminiscent to Starseed from that album.
Right.
And that's a killer track as well, and they both had that more positive, more upbeat, more fun side of rock and roll versus the grunge stuff that was coming out. Although again, I've said Soundgarden was doing this kind of stuff too. This isn't necessarily new or groundbreaking, even in terms of the '90s. But I
feel like this song is just like it's really like almost cookie cutter, but in a good way, for like the sound of it, like the music. But then the lyrics are really the differentiation point, because it's such an honest FU to the folk who are being a certain way. And then if you do look at rock stars, they often still believe they rep the people when you can't. You can't be of the people once you get to a certain place in life. You're no longer in that world. You cross over, and then you can remember being in that people, but I think it's an interesting point that it brought to. It made me think, and I like songs that make me think.
It's funny because you look back at this and what you're saying about them putting that message forward, and you look at them now, and they are the dictionary definition of pretentious, live in your own bubble rock stars now. So I mean, yeah, it'd be cool if they could maybe take a look back, step out of their shoes for a second, and really remember what they were singing about when they made waves as an up and coming rock and roll band.
It's honestly, I think it's one of the scariest prospects of success is the selling out part. Like, it's almost impossible not to, and then what happens if you do? Anyway, I think it's a cool song. I give it a 4. It's not better than a 4 to me. It's interesting compared to it, but even Live Forever has a better feel, I find, than this one.
I'm actually giving it a 4.5.
Oh, fair enough.
This is my favorite track on the album so far.
All right, next up is Columbia, an arbitrarily named song.
It's not what I hear, I can see the signs.
This one is like almost literally what you described in terms of they sat around and they jammed for a while and they created this vibe, this groove. There were no lyrics at first and they just did it. That was the track. They would perform it live, and it was like, what the fuck, or what the hell is this 6-minute like track, whatever. Then they added lyrics later on. Again, this is all stuff I read. I could be wrong. Apparently the title comes from they were on a certain hallucinogen in the composition of the song, and in a hotel room called Acid Columbia, and like the Beatles, eh? It was like you can really see they were on the same kind of stuff even. And
I think every musician,
maybe
every musician in this genre
and
has dabbled at least.
And so, yeah, Columbia's just some hotel that's affiliated with them, and they're like, well, just call it this because why does it need another name? Who cares? What do you call a song, I think is the direct quote from Liam or Noel. And I'm like, okay.
I don't know. What do you call a song, Liam and Noel Gallagher?
This is Columbia, so I have to give it to them. The groove doesn't change much. They do add little subtle flares. They do some guitaring. They sing some lyrics. But it's pretty much the same core for 6 minutes and 17 seconds. And I'll give it to them. I'm not bored when it ends. I'm just like sitting there. And like I was saying, it's the perfect background music. You don't got to focus on this. You just vibe. If you were at the live show, you'd be dancing. You almost don't want the song to end. You can create a moment here. And like lyrically, it's just like, I'm confused. Are you confused? We're confused. Let's write some confusing lyrics. Yay. So I guess it kind of fits the definitely maybe idea of the album in the most direct way. And I don't know, man. I feel like the melodies they use for singing, everything about this song is pretty good, except for the fact that it's pretty much about nothing. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay. The middle of the album, right, is where you're supposed to get your either your power ballad or your big rager or your offbeat instrumental track, which I guess this was supposed to be. It's supposed to be where you get your left turn on a truly great album. And again, I've been proven wrong already that this is a truly great album because people love this album. But
It's pretty solid so far to me.
this is again, it's just more of the same, and I like the vocals. There's some cool little harmonies going on. I can't say too much about the music because it's just blues rock and a groove for 6.5 minutes. Like,
It's a good
look,
groove.
Metallica came out with Some Kind of Anger, and Some Kind of Anger has a great Some Kind of Monster from Saint Anger. I apologize for for the two of you who actually like that album. But it's the for 7.5 minutes, and there's nothing, there's no variation. This is the R, the burp, and that's what this song feels like. It's just that for 6 minutes of the same, not even a riff. It's just strumming chords and little leads that aren't going anywhere. Like
Sometimes it's not about how complicated it is.
I know,
It's about how it makes you feel.
And I like simple music, but this is to me, just to me, this is simple in the middle of an album. Just a big meaty piece of simplicity, just for the point of just for the sake of simplicity. And it's just like,
I feel like it really reflects what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to make songs you can vibe to. Really, this is just
great background music. You put this on in the background of like American Pie, like a party scene. It plays into a scene. You know what I mean? And then Stifler comes up and he's like, and
I give it a 4.5, dude.
That's fantastic. I give it a 3
because I could really put this on, and it really makes me feel better. I don't know. There's something fun about the energy of this song that's uplifting. It's effectively uplifting.
I could totally put this on and not pay attention to it. But at the same time, why wouldn't I put on something that, if I'm not going to pay attention to it anyway, I'm going to put on one of my favorite bands. I'm going to put on some 12 Foot Ninja. I'm going to put on some Metallica. I'm going to put on some...
But you could also just, like, by the same example, I feel like it's tapping into a lot of the same stuff that, like, EDM does, or it's a lot about the energy created by the music.
Sure, for sure. But there are some EDM pretty lights. People like Zed's Dead. Is that his name?
I don't know.
Like musicians that put the time into crafting. Even Skrillex puts the time into crafting the pieces, and so that there is variation. It's very subtle. And I mean, I'm not saying there's no variation in this track.
There's a lot of subtle variations.
I'm not saying there's no variation in this track, but I'm saying it just... Look, in the context of another record where every song wasn't this, I might have enjoyed this a little more. But because every song is this, and they're all this for so long, and there's just more of this, and there's only been one track that I can say really wasn't just this so far, and we're already halfway through the record. Like, I can't give this track maybe the props that it deserves.
All right, let's I guess go on to the Supersonic, the remastered version of Supersonic. Like, I really dig this track, for real. This song is kind of like him being the opposite of the Shakermaker, kind of like aimless, floaty song. This is the, like, take control and accomplish some stuff with your life song. Like, the world is going to move around you, and if you're not going to be your own person and find your own identity and go out there and get the things that you want, and in his mind, he's describing how he gets kind of like faded and he gets where he needs to be to accomplish some stuff. Like, he feels supersonic, describes the different things that make him feel supersonic along the way, and there's a couple of substances he likes, and he goes out there and does it. But one of the interesting points is how he describes just this little short tidbit of how, like, his boy is describing how he wants to get that girl, but then just like sits in the corner and doesn't do anything with it, almost showing like the consequence of what happens if you just talk all the time but don't actually get out there and go do it. And I think it's an interesting take on life, to like those people who aren't afraid to go get messed up, clean way of saying do drugs, and go out there and accomplish the various goals that they're doing. And if you look at it, I mean, they were recording and making this album, obviously, and they are actually doing some stuff whilst being in this working class environment. And I think it's an interesting perspective piece at the middle point of this album.
I mean, the chord progression is a little more immediate. It's a little more accessible. It's a little poppier. I really, 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 really like the vocal delivery on this one. It's very tongue in cheek. Like, give me your autograph. Like, it's really ugly the way he delivers that. And there's not too much more to say about it. It's a fun song. I like it exponentially more than I like the last one. If more of the songs could have been like this, again, would have justified their runtime. I'm gonna give this one a light breezy I'm gonna give it a 4.
I give this one a 4.5. Like, it's got that sound. Now, I don't want to say that they invented that sound, but they took that like 90. Like, if you were to like look for a token song of the 90s, this is the most token 90s song that we've heard on this album so far. Like, this doesn't necessarily feel like we're trying to be the Beatles and we're trying to be high. This is more like a tragic, dark song going on about the regular world he's in right now.
Not necessarily dark, but melancholy.
Right.
And that's that vibe of the 90s, right? That like lethargic, but still kind of angry, but not like punk rock angry, like very drugged out,
like,
angry.
I'm gonna go and float through and things are gonna inevitably work out because I'll be a real nonconformist with all my conformist beliefs.
Yeah, it sounds very modern for the time period. Right now, I say it sounds a little dated, especially since I'm not going to say this chord progression wasn't done before this, but I mean since this, it's been done to death. And I mean, look, I was singing Kryptonite before by Three Doors Down, and that's very reminiscent of this chord progression. It's super simple. I mean, Blurry by Puddle of Mud.
Okay, I see it, yeah.
Other post-grunge acts.
So it's almost like, as you hear a lot of these songs, it's like a lot of bands that I came to really like clearly bumped this album and stole a lot of influence from it, is what I'm seeing.
I think more took influence from the same places this took influence from the 70s, from Led Zeppelin, from the Beatles, from, you know, those kind of seminal hard rock acts.
But man,
really
this was like all over. This stuff kind of popped, no? Like, most people would have listened to Oasis during the 90s.
I think a lot of people are still listening to Oasis.
Fair enough.
Drives me nuts. I don't understand it.
I guess you kind of wish you could take their reputation and bring it on down. I feel like this is his anthem track, right? Like, he's very clear that he's an outcast throughout this album. It's been reminiscent. Here he's just flat out saying, we're the outcast, we going blah, 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 blah. And it's fun. It feels more like an aggressive anthem. I can tell you that this is the funnest song so far for me. Like, you really, the energy, it brings you to this, like, it makes you want to mosh and dance at the same time. And that's a good place to be, where you can sit there and go hard, or you can have fun. And it's a nice hybrid feeling. I relate to this track. I'm always down for a good Outkast anthem, you know, F the System type stuff. And great feel, great drums at the beginning. It sounds different. You know what? I see what you're saying now. The first few songs are just kind of a mesh of like almost the exact same thing. And here we're starting to see them like branch out of that into
just a little bit, but enough to make it different and a little more exciting.
Like, it makes sense on this album. It still feels right for the album. It's still got that core sound, but it's got life in it now. It's almost like we started off this album in a confused mess, and as the album progresses, the music goes from being spaced out and confusing to a more focused, and like he's got a point to a lot of what he's saying.
Yeah, and I mean, look, a song doesn't have to be fast and upbeat and energetic to have life to it. Like, you can have a really slow song that's got a lot of life to it. but a lot of these tracks, maybe it's just because of the length, maybe it's because of the production. They feel so dead and
maybe it's
and
the
hollow.
point. Maybe this is a concept album in their mind, and they were deliberately trying to create this ambiguous, confusing sound, and then as the album goes on, you get more wisdom and reflection.
And that's a super cool idea, but really, really hard to execute. You know what I mean? And I mean,
I've seen it a lot more than you'd think, where they try to structure the tracks where the most young and confusing stuff is at the beginning, and by the end you're getting like the more wise closing final statement type things.
sure.
Maybe I'm looking for it. I might confess I like the idea of concepts in albums, but
And I mean, look, I keep bringing up bands that and it's unfortunate that I do. Maybe it's just part of my inherent grudge against Oasis for no real particular reason. But I bring up Our Lady Peace, I bring up U2. Right now I'm gonna bring up the Tragically Hip for this track because this sounds like a Tragically Hip track that the Tragically Hip had already done, but better. And like a lot of this feels like, and obviously the Beatles, obviously Led Zeppelin, like it feels like a lot of this stuff was done more succinctly, more to the point, more immediately, before Oasis did this. And the Tragically Hip were Canadian pride, by the way.
I don't like the Tragically Hip so much, but I really like this.
Okay.
And I've tried to get it. Like the Tragically Hip, I feel is like one of those bands where as a Canadian you're supposed to like them. So I go and I put their music on and I find it boring.
Well,
this,
that's fair.
I can ride the energy on because I feel like at least in '94 I could hang out with the Gallagher boys and it would be a good time.
See, because the Tragically Hip also do this. They'll vibe on a riff for 4.5 to 7.5 minutes.
It's something about the way they feel versus the way this feels. And I know it's such a subjective thing to go, yeah, it feels a certain way, but the energy that comes forth, this blatant disregard for the conventional way of life, that I want to be myself and I'm confused and I know it. And I love the energy and the theme of this album. And I think it's helping me give it the grades I'm giving it because I can put this on and it's got this relatable, like, I know exactly what it's like to be an artist working in the system trying to make it. And this is like the soundtrack and anthem of that feeling.
Fair enough.
And
I mean,
this song carries on with the tune. Like, I know, like, I go to work and I'm the fucking weird one. I'm the one with the long hair and the beard trying to be a rapping, podcasting, this, that, and everyone else has families and houses. So for me, it's like...
families and houses.
You know?
Families and houses.
I hear stuff like this and I'm like, I get where they're coming from. And I can see the brilliance in the struggle they must have had to have dealt with once upon a time before it got to their head. And I like it. So for me, it's another 4.5.
Interesting.
None of it's perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's really good for what it is.
I'm still tossing this a 3.5. It's not. It's a good tune, but I hate to use this as an argument like the Hip did it better, Our Lady Peace did it better, U2 did it better, and I don't even like U2 that much. So I still
somebody
think
even commented in the Kesha review we did, stop comparing Kesha to other artists, appreciate their brilliance. That was a comment I got.
Okay,
So.
well,
But I get where you're coming from because sometimes
for the
that's
record,
all you can do.
For the record, audience, all major artists draw influence from other major artists that came before them. Nothing is original, so if you're gonna get annoyed at us for making comparisons to other bands as critics and reviewers, I don't know what to tell you.
That's okay.
You
I
can't
see
not
the
do it.
brilliance of Oasis. I see it, even if he doesn't. I mean, this album, I don't want to say Oasis. I don't know anything about them after this. I take that original statement. Anyway, so let's move on to some fun coping mechanisms in cigarettes and alcohol.
Anyway, all right.
I like this track. This one is like a step above everything we've heard, in my opinion. It has more of a polished, fun feel to it in terms of like effort put into it. It's got an interesting point, how like he lives his life, he does his grind, but really at the end of the day, does he need to go to this job? Because as long as he's got cigarettes and alcohol, he can go about doing what he wants and creating the world he wants. It's almost like he lives like one of those punk scrungy kids, and his music does not reflect that in sound at all, albeit his lyrics are kind of selling that idea.
Well,
I just picture him like going to work, looking around, being like, "This is holding me back."
I mean, some of it sounds a little more like the Clash or like the Ramones, like
Okay.
older school punk rock.
And I don't know. I like this. This is like an anti-conformist anthem that doesn't sound fake. Like it sounds like he knows that all of this crap is crap, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to just go in there and aimlessly go to work anymore. He doesn't want to pursue this pointless life. He wants to have the time to express himself, and he's come to find solace in these two items, and that's what he's after. As long as he can have that, everything in his world can fall apart, and he's cool with it.
That's fair enough. I mean, I really do like this song as well, but I think and the thing that's detrimental about doing track for track on an album like this is that this really does still sound so much like the first 3 or 4 tracks that I can't, like, it sounds so much like them that like it's a little more upbeat and it's a little more immediate, but it almost doesn't quite have an identity of its own to me. Like,
I feel like if this is their core sound, let's say for this album, we've had a little break, and they're now bringing back in again because they've given us a couple of songs off from that, and I don't know. I feel like this is the most polished version of that sound on this album.
Definitely. I agree, but it's still that sound, and the song is still, it's a little shorter, but like for example, Nirvana did the same kind of thing on Nevermind.
Right.
And not every single one of those songs is an immediate classic.
See, I feel like with Nevermind, the first 6 songs are incredible, and you don't really need to listen to the second half of the album as much.
But for example, for a band like Soundgarden, we're talking the 90s right now, right? So we're talking grunge, we're talking this kind of music, we're talking post-grunge, we're talking rock and roll revival. And it's just like for an album, on an album like Super Unknown, like every song all the way down to the end has its own really distinct personality. So even if you don't like the song, you can't argue that it's because it sounds so much like 2 or 3 songs that came before it. Whereas on an album like this, where even though Soundgarden has a sound, this album almost has a formula as opposed to a sound. And it's just like, and it's the same thing with Nirvana, and again, Nevermind's a classic album. I'm not going to sit here and shit on it, but it's the same kind of thing where it has a formula. Nirvana had a formula.
All right.
And it's like I really do like this song, so that's why I'm so mixed about it, because it is a better version of what happened before.
This, like, so far, if you were to be like, what's a song that best represents Oasis from this album alone, I would say it's this song. This is the Oasis jam of this album. That would if you were gonna try and convert a fan to their core sound, it's it. It's like, to me, a true
I would
good
throw on
song.
Supersonic, or what was that third one there? Live Forever.
I'd say this one does it better because it's a lot more honest and it has more depth. It's interesting. It's got almost like a point to it above and beyond, say, Supersonic, which he's still trying to figure out his point. This is the point, and everything else is kind of a lesser articulated version of this point.
Sure. I mean, I'm still going to give it a 4 because I do like the song, but my complaints, and again, I keep repeating the same complaint, which I know I sound repetitive.
It's all right.
And I'm sorry.
It's okay. Digby's dinner will change it all up. Finally something I can really truly vibe to. This song is great. The beginning chord progression, it's very it fits with the rest of the album. It's quirky, it's offbeat. Throw a little bit of an ugly jazz chord into there. It's a 2.5 minute happy little jam, and it is the only song under 3 minutes
this
album.
It's the only song under 4 minutes on this album. Oh, sorry.
No,
The last track
3.
is under 4 minutes, but yeah, it's the only song under 3, and by a large margin. And it's a little bit more what Oasis would become, I guess. It's a little more polished. But it still manages to fit.
It's also, like, lyrically just completely left field, right? This is that left field track 5. Like, if this had been the track 5, it would have exactly been what you wanted.
Should have come earlier, but I love this track. This is, I'm not gonna give away too much because I do have another track coming up that I really like. Don't worry, guys. I didn't just hate this album all the way through. But no, this
one's cute. It's just
cute.
like he's trying to get this girl to come have lasagna with him, and it's the best lasagna ever. And if she brings her friends, they'll like the lasagna. And it's honest like, hey, we'll have the best relationship ever. And it's just so fucking happy and nice and lovely.
And it sounds like they're having fun. And like it's really relatable. This is really relatable to the everyman.
It's just a normal, less drug-used song. How apparently this came from a guy named Digsy, who is just kind of the singing equivalent of freestyling about ridiculous stuff like cheese-flavored lasagna and weird stuff like that. So Noel went ahead and took that and wrote a song around it to bother him, to irk him. And this other guy actually responded with a song called Noel's Nose on a later album. So they had a fun little spat there. So Digby's actually a real person.
That's really cute.
And I don't know if this is what Oasis sounds like later on. Maybe I would like more of it because it is a truly spectacular track. It's I find it a little silly. It's a little short to the point. I give it a 4.5. I feel like it could have been a little more interesting. It could have stretched it actually a little bit longer, and it would have been fun.
And on an album full of similarly length songs, I might have complained about that, but it's just such a breath of fresh air on an album full of 5-minute droners. Like this thing is late in the game, but it still comes in and it piqued my hopes up a little bit when I heard it. I was like, okay, here's something I can finally really vibe to. And this one gets a 5 for me, just in context. Yeah.
All right. You have more to say on Digby's Dinner?
No, I guess we can just slide away. Slide away.
Why don't you slide? I just want to make a note that I forgot to make throughout the whole album. I want to give the bassist big props on this album because he's not a boring static bass line. He's not the greatest bass line ever, but pretty much all the bass lines have melodies to them that don't necessarily are exactly the same thing as the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, on a record like this, if the bass is just doing what the guitar is doing, that's almost unforgivable.
But it does keep up the life, it keeps up the strength, and I want to give him props because most of the bass lines of this era of music are not enthralling. This guy was like a step up compared to most of the dudes around him.
I disagree, but that is an entirely separate conversation.
Fair enough. At least in this sound, this particular kind of simple, boring. Anyway, maybe I'm gonna get butchered for that, but I liked him. I thought he has some good styles, and he fit really snug like a glove and all of that stuff. This song is great though, Slide Away. This is like, I feel like Slide by the Goo Goo Dolls. Like he heard this and kind of wrote that. And a lot of other songs too. Like this is the template for like romantic songs that sound like this. I don't know, maybe there's one earlier, but the late 90s was full of this song.
Yeah.
Rewritten a whole bunch of times by like every band that was worth listening to. And this one is like 6.5 minutes, but it doesn't feel it. It feels like a step above most of the stuff. Like again, it's almost like the later you go on this album, the better the music becomes, which is maybe courteous of them. And because like sometimes you hear sometimes the first 6 songs are like the bangers of bangers, and then the rest of it's just filler. I feel like this is the opposite. Like it started off kind of whatever, and this is incredible. This is like, if you want the pop version, go listen to all the 3.5 minute versions that came out later on in the 90s. But this is like the raw. It's got some serious guitar work compared to the rest of the album. It's got deviations.
It's got some actual guitar work, I think you mean.
Yeah, it's got like.
Sorry, that was mean.
But it's got like a good lyrical sense. It's romantic, man. This is going to make the ladies feel things, and it's effective at that goal. Like I'm impressed by how like it almost feels out of place. Like.
Yeah.
They ran out of confusing songs and decided to go, let's write a love song.
This is, it's definitely much more focused, which is interesting to say because it is a 6.5 minute song. So like, oh, you could focus on a long song. Interesting. Anyway.
But it was amazing. This is a clear 5.
It's a great track. It's not going to get a 5 for me.
It hit my like soft spot.
Yeah. You know what? It's a little cheesy, but it definitely did influence especially the Goo Goo Dolls. You listen to something like
Slide. Like, let's just be direct.
Not Slide. What's the other one?
Iris?
Yeah, Iris. Iris. You listen to Iris, and it's like, this is that track. But done more naked and more personal and more honest. Like,
It's like the lack of polish does it justice. It's like...
doesn't quite fit thematically, I think, with the rest of the album, even though it is, I would say, cut above
we
the
could
rest
say
of
the
the album.
same thing about Digby's Dinner.
Yeah, the last three tracks really
They're
are
all
quite
kinda lovey.
interesting. They're quite
It's
good.
like if you were to look at this like a story. At track 8, with cigarettes and alcohol, he's figured out his life, what he wants to do. And then he fell in love, and the rest of it's kind of him telling us about how he fell in love. And I'm like, okay. Like, it just turns. The whole album is pivoted for the remainder of it.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to look at it. This gets a 4.5 for me, because it is a good tune. It's a little cheesy, but it's a good tune. It's a good delivery. It's, again, much more focused, much more interesting than many of the other moments
That
on
is
this
true.
record. So, I mean, they're not like Married with Children or anything, but
Are they not?
You're sorry, goodbye, I'm going.
such a good song.
It's like, here I feel like he had a fight with a girl that he was dating or whatever, and he
Or
just,
Married with Children.
and like, seriously, this song is just like, you're annoying. I find you annoying,
Yeah.
and I'm home.
I hate your music.
Home.
It's shite. It keeps me up all night.
And like, it's just regular ass, I've been living with you for long enough that everything about you bothers me. But not in like it's not hateful. It's honestly just taking that one side of marriage and focusing on it. Like, yeah, this has its very annoying stuff. It honestly feels
It's like it's run its course.
like, it feels like one of those comedy routines where guys who have been married for 10 years talk about how they're married for 10 years, except like in the song format and strangely on this album. And that's what I meant with this left turn. Like, this doesn't fit the album.
No, but I think that, you know, it's an up and down kind of opinion, because like this track really works. I think a lot of the reason is because it's acoustic.
Right.
This is the first one where I actually cared enough about what he was saying to listen to the lyrics and not just be like, oh my god, this is a long song, I don't care. But like, this one, I feel like if some of the other tracks had maybe been stripped down a little more and had been done acoustic or with a little less reverb or a little less overdrive, you know, they would have been shorter just by definition, but they might have hit a little better. And I think there were some missed opportunities here, because this is really a great track.
And I think it's because they focused enough to write something interesting, right? Like, this isn't just a song about I'm confused or I'm bliss, I'm that, blah, blah. This is like a song where it's so universal. It's like, it's so regular compared to all the irregular themes and ideas. Like, it went from like, we're acid doing crazy rock star wannabe types to, yep, came home last night, she was listening to her pop music in the morning, and I can relate to this one. She takes showers in the morning, man. And
How dare she?
She listens to Iggy Azalea. I have to listen to that Mo Bounce song, and it's awful. It's like bounce, 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 bounce. Actual lyrics. She says bounce like 1,000,000 times in the song. It's terrible.
I got behind one Iggy song. It's called Trouble. It's featuring Jennifer Hudson. It's amazing. Check it out.
You know it's not amazing? Mo Bounce. But I have to listen to that. And just anything. And I get it, man. I totally get it. And every part of this song is kind of relatable now that I've been living with a girl. But it's so regular. I was like I was like charmed with this song. It was like,
I agree, actually. That's a good word for it. It's a very charming little tune.
I give it a 4.5.
I give this one a straight 5.
I mean, it's kind of not perfect to me. It's just a regular ditty, but it's definitely on the list of things I could go. Like, I wouldn't want to put this on a lot, but when I would hear it, it would be nice. Whereas something like Slide Away, I could listen to Slide Away a lot because it's got that feel of something that's really replayable. Whereas
this is the kind of song where, like, if a guy were to pick up a song at a guitar at a party and say, I'm gonna play some Oasis, I'd be like, oh, no, he's gonna play Wonderwall. And if he started playing this, I'd be like, mad respect, and I'd sing along, and it would be awesome, because this this to me is
far
what Wonderwall
better.
should have been. This is just
Well, I think they're not the same song.
they're not the same song. They're not about the same thing. But this like,
It's a great track.
and you know what? They started the album well and they ended the album really well too
They
with
did.
that Goodbye I'm Going Home. Like this is just a perfect album closer to a not so perfect album, but props
Alright,
to
well,
at least being able to bookend
honestly,
it properly.
If I want to just talk about the album as a whole, I never listened to an Oasis album.
Oh, I'm giving this a
before.
5 by the way. This track.
Oh, sorry
5.
about that. To cut you
okay.
off. But yeah, so I would say this album ended up getting a 4.3 for me. Like 4.36 was almost a 4.4. It's got like the realms of classic for its sound, right? Like within its world, its historical context, its influence, all of that. Like I feel like if you're really going to go through the history of rock, this album has its place and should be talked about and should be heard by people even if you don't like it per se. But it maybe isn't my favorite sound of music to put on all the time.
I'm probably gonna go learn Married with Children. I'd never heard it before. I really, really like it. The rest of the album, if I never hear it again, I won't care. Like if it comes on again, it'll be in the background, but I'm not gonna put it on. It's not my jam. It gets a 3.5 from me because it's good.
I liked it. I feel
good.
like this is very good mindless music.
There are too many long, drony songs.
All right.
Too many for too long, and I can't justify that. Especially when the art of the album is dying, and look, this I get it. This is the early '90s. That it wasn't dying back then. Like, the album was very important, but I think that it needs new life now. And if artists are going to take influence from this and make albums like this, then that's only going to be more nails in the coffin of the art of the album. And that to me is important to avoid.
I don't know 100% if that's true, to be honest. I feel like an album is a collection of songs that work together, right?
Yeah, but it
Ultimately.
should have some kind of cohesive feel, and
But
it's not just a collection of
See,
songs.
but
An
like,
album
I
should
feel
be
like it's not the most defined thing, but you do go from this confused, open, airy feel to by the end, it's almost like I picture like a tunnel of focus. If you look at his mental focus on this album, you're here, like, I want to be a rock star, and it ends with, think about it, it starts with him wanting to be a rock star, and it ends with him married with children, and as he goes through this, like, crazy ride of confusion, he meets the girl and, like, settles down, and it's almost got, like, this finality and completion to it. I would say maybe it's not the best example of the art of the album, but it's definitely not going to kill the art of the album, in my opinion. There are some... Incubus 8 is a better example of a random collection of songs that don't make sense together versus Definitely Maybe, which has a congruency to it, even if it's not the best.
I'm not going to argue that Incubus 8 is a masterpiece. I like it because I love Incubus. Like, that's another bias. There's still a couple of tracks on that album that I'm like, you really didn't have to do that.
Yeah, but... anyway.
It's kind of a pointless album, but I think there are some truly great songs on it. Like, I think Incubus are truly great musicians. I think Oasis, for all I bitch about them, are truly great musicians. But three and a half.
Right.
That's what it
So
gets. It's not terrible. It's not amazing.
So I guess that's where we're at for this week.
Next week
is Queens of the Stone Age, because
super excited.
finally somebody who we've heard of is releasing an album, and
Produced by Mark Ronson. If you don't know the name, he is the man behind Uptown Funk. He's the man behind a bunch of pop hits from the past 5 or 6 years. Check him out. He's an amazing songwriter, an amazing producer, a genuine prodigy. I cannot wait to hear what he does with this album. I cannot wait to hear what Josh Homme does with this album, because the Queens of the Stone Age are also amazing.
But yeah, on that note, if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more.
Tell me where my water is.
Tell him where his water is, and if you hit show more, you can keep in touch with us and all that other fun stuff. So until the next time, it's been fun.